Some of the ideas that are behind our efforts to make spaces great in New York, and now we're applying that in other places, came from this city. Governor Dukakis mentioned Northeastern, broken windows invented at Northeastern by Kelling and Wilson. And our great parks intellectual, William H. White, who taught us to use movable chairs. Absolutely critical. This allows people to choose their sun orientation, choose their conversational groupings, and it leads to a random appearance of park use rather than what's caused by benches being in a set location. Movable depending on sun and shade conditions. Very interesting thing we've noticed, people's skin color determines which way they'll face on a sunny day. Mediterraneans, Africans, Asians, much more likely to look into sun. Irish, Scandinavians look away. How do you do that with a bench? Can't do it. So you got to give them that option. And also people choose conversational groupings based on their number in their group and how hard of hearing they are. Interesting things you learn being a park person. So don't do seating like that. I won't mention what parks those are, but they're not represented on the panel. I think Elizabeth knows which one the upper right is, though. And that's the worst kind of seating you can do, and you see this everywhere. Why would a family of four want to sit on that bench around the tree and face in 4 different directions? Not good for conversation. So movable chairs, that comes from William H. White. Now, second most important thing, play to women. If you're going to have great parks, make women happy. Because women are your toughest users. And I give White credit for this. He was the first pointed out to me. My wife in the 11th row also pointed that out. And she's been a very good park observer up there. So how to make women happy? I'm just going to give you 2 ideas. Restrooms, but good ones. Women are very harsh on the standard public restroom. This is what the Bryant Park restroom looks like when you come in. So our statement here is, woman, you're coming into our space. There's no way you're going to have a bad experience because we have a bouquet of flowers, and we have mosaics and recessed lighting and a full-length mirror. We did a little focus group on women in restrooms. All the women said, men don't understand what women need in a restroom, and one of the things we need is a full-length mirror. So we've got them when we do that. And then homelessness. Best policy about homeless, and this pleases women very much, is not, you can't win a battle saying we're going to get homeless out of a park. Bryant Park has 13 people who are there every single day who are homeless. But the ratio of non-homeless to homeless is what matters. And how do you change that? Not by being nasty to the homeless people, but instead by bringing in droves of other people so that women who enter the park look around and say, well, this isn't a homeless hangout, I feel safe here. And their numbers increase. So we track the number of homeless people and the number of non-homeless people, and we make sure the ratios are extremely high. The best 200 or 300 to 1 is your best ratio, and it's hard to do that unless you're going to have a lot of users. More in a minute about how to build users. By the way, there's a homeless person in this picture. Those in the front rows probably might be able to see him, but how do you pick him out? And as long as he follows the park rules, he's there all day. But women come in and they don't see that scene and say, I've got to get out of here. Now this is the ratio of women to men in Bryant Park, pink women, blue men. And as you can see, as the year developed, we're now making increasing strides towards 55 or 60% women in our park. And women vote with their feet, and if the park weren't good, they wouldn't stay. So unless you're on the Vassar campus or somewhere like that, you're not going to get ratios much higher than that. You try to get 55 or 60% women in a park. If you're ever in a park and you want to know whether it's safe, count the number of men and women. And if it's close to 50-50, you're safe. If it's 80-20, get out immediately. 80-20 men. Other things that don't so much involve gender, hardscape versus softscape. Holly White always used to say, the people at Lincoln Center just don't understand how hostile their public space is, and they just spent $1 billion on the space, and they didn't really change it that much in my view, so it's still pretty much hardscape. Not to hope nobody from Lincoln Center is in the audience, because they're proud of their project. Our park, what we did, it was half gray and half green, and we added planters and other things to make it more green appearing. And softscape is cheap, and people appreciate it, and they prefer it to hardscape. So these are all things you do. Again, women tend to gather near the gardens, another indication that you've got a popular item. On the Common, there are two areas that make me wince a little bit now, and I know they make the Commissioner wince, and Henry wince, and Liz wince a little bit. Too much hardscape at the Boylston Tea Station, and too much hardscape at Park Street. So things are underway that you'll be very excited to hear from Friends of the Public Garden on that, working cooperatively with the Parks Department to green these areas up and make them more pleasant. Then last, outdoor temperatures have, the perception of when you can be outside has changed greatly. Anybody remember when the great NFL championship games with the Green Bay Packers were played back in the 60s? December 10th. Super Bowl is now February 2nd, so that means that championship games are mid-January. So all of a sudden, people say, we can be outside in the winter. I think it's Gore-Tex, I think it's road racing. It's not global warming. That's not enough of an effect. 1 degree won't do it. And people are now outside in the winter. So parks in this climate zone 6, I guess you are, need to play to your winter visitors and stop being 5 or 6 month-a-year parks. And Boston's well positioned to do that. We use Wi-Fi all winter, also put out a rink and a market for Christmas to try to keep people coming. And as you can see, what used to be a bell curve, that's months use from January to December, it's now starting to become a little flatter. And now that we're extending our rink, we got rid of our fashion shows, which had been imposed on us by others. And the rink is now going to be open through March. And you're going to see this flatten out, where there's almost as much use in the cold winter months as there is in the shoulder seasons. And then entertainment, that you've got to build a constituency to be able to do park sponsorships of any kind. And we do everything from outdoor movies, where we were the first, I think, to do it, to something we'd like to try at the Brewer Fountain, and it has been approved in concept by the city, which is an outdoor reading room. This fits in with Boston, which is a city of learning and books, and there are books, magazines, and newspapers here. This is sponsored by a bank, and you can see it's not a garish sponsorship, more on that later. Piano in the park, a cappella groups, pétanque. Those of you who've been in France have seen these wonderful games with Frenchmen with long cigarette ashes screaming at each other about which ball is closer to the mark. And we have that in Bryant Park. Backgammon and chess, ping pong. More about this in the sponsorship section, because this is sponsored. And I want to assure you, you can do sponsorships without the greedy sponsor demanding billboards to give them credit for their work. This is an area that's sponsored, more on that in a second. And I couldn't agree more with Commissioner Pollack, who said health club memberships are declining because of the economy. So we do Tai Chi and yoga, and it's extremely popular. That's another constituency you're building. So you get these little constituencies that will come to your space even when it's cold or rainy. So a question that Henry and Les asked us to consider: how do you get the business community to be supportive? This slide gives you an idea. We are a privatization outright. We're not a friends group. We moved all the way to running it privately, but I invite you to run through Bryant Park, and I don't think you'll look at this and say, this looks like a private park to me. It's quite public and quite diverse in its users. But forget that. Go on to how we got the real estate owners to be excited about this. We allowed them to charge more for rent. A very modest estimate by one of my board members, who wanted to show me how much money I had made him over my career, said $5 a foot more rent from his building, the Grace building, as a result of Bryant Park opening. And there's 1.3 million square feet in that building. So if you multiply those, your annual rent and roll went up by 6.5 million. And those of you who know what a capitalization rate is, we use one from the period, and $72 million went into their pockets just as a result of Bryant Park being fixed up. So this is the reason why people like Millennium and Ron Drucker and others have been helpful to Henry and Liz. They see possible improvements in their asset value, and it's enlightened self-interest. And you want those people being sold on business grounds, and that's what we do. We don't accept government funds at Bryant Park, and we don't accept private philanthropy. So this is the kind of backup we need. And they just give the money and then wish us luck. They're not asking us how to run the park. And as I said, if you run through, I think you'll find it to be a very public experience. Most people don't know that we run Bryant Park. They think the city runs it. And then this is where the money from Bryant Park, for Bryant Park, comes from. Event fees was higher. We again vanquished the fashion shows to Lincoln Center, but we're still going to have that number at about $2.5 million. Admittedly, these are New York numbers, but ratchet down for other media capitals like Boston and Dallas and Chicago and LA, and you can do the same thing. And restaurant rent, we have a restaurant that's only 3% of the land mass of the park, but it turns in $1.6 million of rent, free and clear, concessions, assessments from a BID. Boston's just starting to think about BIDs for the Greenway and the like, and sponsorships. And this gives you an idea of how those categories with events at the top have varied over time. And the trick is to keep working these smaller numbers so that if you ever have a problem with one of them at any given time, you build up another of the categories, so you have a solid revenue base. And the consequence of Bryant Park not asking for public funds is the public funds can be spent elsewhere. Here's other parks we run in Herald and Greeley Squares. The blue line means they became contributors to the BID's revenues rather than drains a couple of years ago. And then something obviously you all know that the Boston Globe showed some interest in our techniques. A couple of weeks ago, we didn't expect it to be first page above the fold. It must have been a slow news day, but, or a very respected reporter. But here is an idea of how benign this can be. This is the porch sponsored by Southwest Airlines, which was formerly just a kiosk. And these are signs that say that Bank of America has sponsored the gardens, but most of the text there is poetry from William Cullen Bryant, who the park is named after. So you can barely see the Bank of America. That's the blue line at the bottom. So they're not piggish about how much credit to get, really. Take it from me. In fact, there's Bank of America. You couldn't see their credit for our fall classical festival in the 10th row. It's too small, but they didn't care. So you really can ratchet down the amount of commercial visibility and still take the money. If they were in the audience, I wouldn't be talking that way, but I'm talking to a group of people who want the parks to get the money. And here's where Southwest started. They wanted this logo. This is their logo. This is where we took them, and then we shrunk it down. So you just gotta have, you gotta push back. And there are a lot of pusher backers in Boston. I've already met a lot of them. So we're governed by them. And Henry and Liz are the foremost ones. So here's the before on that Southwest thing. Here's the after. Not really very much commercial help. This we didn't do. This is probably, I hate to pick on a company that I know the mayor is picking on right now, but there were thoughts from Coke about a thing like this. And like this, they went to a district near us and did this. This is where they ended up with us. So this is, they didn't get much for their 150K. But they're happy because the ping pong balls say Coke, and so do the paddles. And you can't see that from far away. And the side of the table says Coke. And the recycling containers and the tables a bit. But that's a small area of the park. We believe all this can be done. The funniest story is Google gave us money for the Wi-Fi system, then forgot about us. So we said, we want to tell people there's a Wi-Fi system. And we made signs that are about the size of a notebook, as you can see, and put them in the ivy saying there's Wi-Fi here. And we called Google and said, you know, we really would like to give you some credit. Oh, we didn't. Did we write you a check? Yes, for $400,000 for 2 years. And we were pretty happy with that baby. And they said, okay, fire away, give us whatever credit you want. We don't care. So there's a little sign. You can't see it, obviously, but it says Google. So I really think with the tiger attitude of Boston to rein in commercialism, which I understand and appreciate, and the availability in Boston of really great park sponsors and patrons, many in your real estate community, Norman Leventhal and others, we can help Friends of the Public Garden come up with a great amount of funds to supplement the incredible efforts of Commissioner Pollack to manage with really very little money. as the governor said. So thank you very much for listening.